What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to the channel.
Yo.
So the Gypsy King put on yet another masterclass last night. I got to be honest, I hope it's not the last masterclass we see from the Gypsy King, but this was just a spectacular performance from start to finish. He was working in that uppercut the entire time, trying to get the timing for it, throwing some hooks, trying to see how Dillian Whyte would react, and then when the time was right, hit him with one of the cleanest knockouts that you will ever see in heavyweight boxing.
Yeah, I mean, this was a memorable night for Tyson Fury, for everybody that was there. I mean, if I was in England, I would have for sure been in the crowd, even if I had to go sit in the nosebleeds. That was probably just a special event to be a part of, especially if it is his last fight. You know, Tyson Fury is a man of his word, and he said that, you know, after the Wilder Fury fight, that was going to be it. But there was a little bit of unfinished business. He wanted to go give his people in the UK one last show, and what a great way to do it. I mean, this fight really did seem to be a perfect way to leave the sport. The punch, the last punch of his career is maybe his best punch that we've ever seen him throw. It was perfectly timed. It wasn't just a lucky shot. He had been doing all kinds of stuff with hooks and not uppercuts, but straights right across to see where Dillian Whyte would expose himself. And that uppercut couldn't have landed any more perfectly. But yeah, I'm just there with you in the sense that I don't want to see Tyson Fury for the last time already happen.
Me either. And I feel like there's a few things that could stop that from being the case. And it's going to be predicated on what happens with Usyk and Joshua.
Right.
Because I don't believe that at the end of the day, I know Tyson made a promise to his wife that this is it and all of that, but at the end of the day, if Anthony Joshua does come back and exact his revenge on Alexander Usyk, it's hard to pass up potentially what would be the biggest boxing match in UK history. It just happens to be between two heavyweight titans. I also happen to think that Tyson Fury would be heavily favored in that match, and rightfully so. I think if he can finish Wilder and finish Whyte like he had, that he should be able to finish AJ. That's just my humble opinion. And for those reasons, I think if AJ does get these belts back, the chance to unify every single heavyweight belt, including Ring Magazine's belt that he currently holds, is almost too good to pass up on. We're talking another Wembley Stadium or some huge arena in the UK. We're talking 100,000 fans. We're talking millions of pay-per-view buys. And so while I do think that Tyson is a man of his word, and I think that he believes that he's retired, I also believe that, you know, as we go and we look back on things, they say hindsight's 20/20. Life changes, things happen, and decisions get made. And so I think that there are some avenues by which we could see Tyson Fury come back, that being one of them. Obviously, Francis Ngannou was in the ring last night, the UFC undisputed heavyweight champion, saying that he's going to do some type of hybrid match with Tyson Fury where they're going to have MMA gloves on. There's going to be some boxing. It's unclear if there's going to be any other special rule sets, and we could do a whole other video breaking down what that might look like. But I think both of those are potential mega money fights, and so I think we will probably see Tyson Fury one more time. If I'm a betting man, that's my prediction.
Yeah, and the only thing better than a come up is a comeback. And Tyson Fury maybe has the greatest comeback of all time. I mean, you have a guy who was literally on the brink of killing his own life. Yeah. And he comes back and he goes and beats the big juggernauts, all of them, in heavyweight boxing. And look, there's no easy fights. There's no easy night of boxing when you're a heavyweight, when you're fighting for world titles, when you're in that position. But I will say that Tyson Fury seemed to me to be operating on a different level as Dillian Whyte. And Dillian Whyte was a good opponent, but you realized after about the second round that he was being well outclassed by Tyson Fury. And Tyson Fury is one of those guys that has the skills and the ability to, and also the showmanship, to extend a fight if he needs to for the sake of the audience. He wants them to have that feeling in their stomach like, oh my gosh, when is somebody going to get knocked out? I personally believe that he probably could have pushed his foot on the gas pedal and knocked Dillian Whyte out a little bit earlier than he did, but he wanted to give the people a show. You know, he didn't want his walkout, which seemed to walk around the entire pitch of the Wembley Stadium soccer field, to be longer than the fight itself. You know, that was an epic walkout. He sang 3 or 4 different songs. Kings of Leon came on.
He sat on a throne.
Yeah, exactly. All of that stuff is so cool, but the fight is what people came there to see, and he put on a great show. He didn't really take much damage. And, you know, boxing's dangerous. Getting punched is definitely not good for you. But it seemed like a little bit of an easy night in the office for him.
Yeah.
And I personally believe that Anthony Joshua wouldn't be much more difficult of a challenge, if more difficult at all, than Dillian Whyte, and definitely not more difficult than Deontay Wilder. So I do believe that while he does not need any more money, and he's not really driven by earning more money, it's hard to put $50 million aside when he could go out and do it and probably not have to, quote unquote, break a sweat all that much. And
Right.
he could go, sail off into another win, probably knock out the last and final name on the heavyweight list that anybody wants to see him fight. I just feel like maybe Paris Fury would be saying, you know what, I think you could knock this dude out pretty easily. 50 million more bucks would be pretty nice to have, and it would just help you solidify your place as the greatest heavyweight, or one of the greatest heavyweights of all time.
I think you're absolutely right. And to be honest, I think even more than the money, he has a fellow countryman that he's never fought that holds more belts than he does. No, that we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. This is assuming that AJ can come back and beat Usyk. And
Right.
I do think that AJ will likely win that fight, but I believe it's a toss-up. But let's just say, for the sake of having some fun here, that AJ does, in fact, beat Usyk, and now he's holding all of those belts again. Now you've got a guy on the other side of the country saying, look, I'm the best British heavyweight. I have more belts than Tyson Fury, and he's always going to be second best to me. I feel like for Tyson, the Gypsy King, the guy that's got bare-knuckle boxing running through his veins and it's in his family lineage, he can't just allow some guy across town to say, I'm better than you, without shutting him up and proving it. So I think the money's great, but I think that might even be more of an incentive for Tyson Fury to come back and do one more fight. And listen, who knows what's going to happen with this Ngannou thing. He's under exclusive contract with the UFC until January, so he can't even be negotiating anything until that contract expires, or until Dana White at the UFC gives the blessing for Ngannou to move forward with negotiating some sort of boxing hybrid match with Tyson Fury. So I think we kind of have to put that one on ice at least until 2023. But we got to see what happens with this AJ Usyk, because that really could be a major factor in what happens with the Gypsy King here.
Yeah, and who knows what's going to happen. If he does retire, technically that belt leaves his hands. But if he doesn't retire, or if he retires and somebody hasn't replaced him as the WBC champion, then we could be talking about a return fight in boxing against AJ or Usyk to unify all the belts. And that's a huge deal, right? Not only is the fight really massive, especially if it's against Joshua, but to unify and be the lineal heavyweight champion of the world. He's holding all the belts, doing it against a fellow countryman. All of that stuff would make for a great promotional, masterpiece. And I think that Tyson would absolutely come out of retirement for that. I personally, and this is a little bit selfish, I would much rather see him do one more fight and it be against Joshua than to go do a boxing hybrid thing against Francis Ngannou. I just don't see how that would be fair for him in any way if they change the rules outside of boxing. The only thing that I would see that could make it interesting slightly is if they allow MMA gloves and then they just do a boxing match, maybe in an octagon.
Yeah.
But if you start adding kicks, you start adding elbows, it's not the same thing. We're not even doing the same sport. And if he's worried about health, if his family's worried about all that stuff, then why do that?
Yeah.
I think that you're a boxer. Stay in your lane. Do your boxing thing. Francis Ngannou is absolutely willing to come over and do full boxing with you, even though he's likely going to get knocked out cold. I just think that it was very weird because he's basically talking to one of the broadcast guys, people on the broadcasting team, saying, I am retired. This is it. I'm a man of my word. And then the next broadcast team guy comes up and he goes, Francis, come over here. We're going to do something. It's just very weird. I didn't understand that. It kind of was a miss for me to have Francis Ngannou in there. But, who knows? The Gypsy King is usually pretty calculated, and I can't wait to see what he does next. I hope it's one more boxing match, and I hope it's against Anthony Joshua, but obviously a lot has to happen before we can see that.
That's for sure. Guys, thanks so much. Drop us a comment if you enjoyed this video. Let us know, do you think the Gypsy King is really done, and should he come back? And would the Usyk fight be a good fight if Usyk does beat Joshua for a second time? We love chatting with you in the comments, and we'll see you in the next video.
Peace.